Hi everyone, I'm Trevor with North Valley Search and Rescue. Today we're going to explore another video in our rope rescue series. As always, this video is for use in conjunction with professional training for North Valley Search and Rescue within the scope of our SOPs utilizing our equipment. This video is not a comprehensive training package, but rather a small component of training and should be used under the guidance of a qualified professional trainer. There are many methodologies and avenues to achieve a desired outcome, but paired or performed incorrectly can result in injury or death. All ratings discussed are with new, fully rated equipment under perfect conditions, which never happens. Used equipment, time, UV exposure, use, application, or any other condition or alteration will change the load capacity. All ratings discussed are approximations and are simplified for your basic understanding purposes only, not to calculate the actual loads or forces. We are glad that you're here with us today, and for a quick reference back to this video and others of ours, please click on the red subscribe button below, or just below that, the add to button and create your own playlist. Might I suggest naming one SAR. So let's kick into today's video. In this video, we're going to go over rope basics. So we're going to look at different types of ropes to get started with. There are 3 different types of ropes that we're predominantly going to see in the rope rescue world, 2 of which we use. The third one we might just encounter. So the first one that I'm going to start off with is a static rope. A static rope traditionally can be designated or known visually because it has 2 colors on it. Normally it's a solid color with tracer, so it's just a wrap of another color. In this case, it's 50-50 split between red and gray. So 2 colors is equal to a static rope. These come in different sizes, and the size range goes from about 9 millimeters up to 1/2 inch is common. There are 3/4 inch, 5/8 inch, 1 inch static ropes. However, what we typically see in our world is 9 millimeters up to 1/2 inch. Now notice that I use both metric and the SAE or English type measurement system, which can be kind of confusing. So predominantly our ropes that we use are 11 millimeter ropes. This is an 11 millimeter rope that we have in our system, which is equivalent to 7/16 of an inch. There's also 1/2 inch, which is equivalent to 12.5 millimeters. Either way, you're going to find it, and ours are marked right here as to what they are, the type of rope, and the size. Okay, so that's static rope. The other consideration or characteristic of a static rope, unlike what the name implies, this does stretch. It's not designed to stretch much because when I have a load on one end and I'm going to pull, I don't want all of that energy of me pulling being absorbed into the rope. I want the load, being the patient and my attendants at the bottom, to move up. So this is designed to stretch between, say, 3 and 10%, which is common. I think that this is set up to stretch about 3.5% over the length of the rope. So characteristic of a static rope. Next, we're going to look at a dynamic rope. Much like what the name does describe, this is designed to stretch. It's dynamic. This is what rock climbers, ice climbers, mountaineers, etc., what they use. So this is designed to stretch anywhere from 10 to 40% over the length of the rope. Because rock climbers and ice climbers, when they climb up, they often take falls because that's what they're doing, is out to enjoy some high-risk activity, and we want this rope to catch them, but we want it to absorb that energy so that the impact of the fall on their harness doesn't transfer directly to their body 100%. A lot of that energy is absorbed within the rope. We don't use this in rope rescue world because as I pull on it, it will just keep stretching and stretching and stretching, so I lose some of my energy that I'm putting into the rope. So I'm pulling, and my load is not moving yet. These ropes are found anywhere from 8 millimeters up to about 11 millimeters in size, and these are always rated in millimeters, not necessarily in that SAE equivalent or the English system. So the way to visually identify that this is a dynamic rope is because it has 3 or more colors. So this one has a teal background with blue and pink tracers. So multiple colors equals a dynamic rope. The third one, the third category that we will see in rope rescue is accessory cord. Now, accessory cord is constructed the same as our dynamic and as our static ropes, where it's got a core on the inside and a sheath on the outside, but it's just smaller, and they're rated in millimeter size, anywhere from 1 millimeter all the way up to 8 millimeter in size. So these are rated differently based on their size. Some of them add a couple 100 pounds of force, or maybe like 2 kilonewtons of force, all the way up to several kilonewtons, up to 10 kilonewtons, depending on the size of the cord. Cord can be multiple colors. It can be one solid color, but it's constructed the same as the other ropes. So I just talked about this being rated, as with these two, are rated in kilonewtons. And I'm going to explain real quick what a kilonewton is. This can get really, really complex, but I'm going to try and bring it back at the end to something very, very simplistic. So follow along with me. If you remember way, way, way back from physics class back in high school, you will remember that force equals mass times acceleration. Oh, yep, there's a little bit of math, but it's going to be simple. I'm going to bring it back to simple. So force equals mass times acceleration. So mass, everything that we do is metric with rope rescue. So I'm going to take pounds. So we're going to say the average person with gear on is going to weigh about 224 pounds. 224 pounds conveniently is equal to 100 kilograms on the metric side. So our mass is 100 kilograms. So I said mass times acceleration. So now we're going to look at acceleration. I, standing here, am being accelerated towards the center of the planet because of gravity. So gravity is equal to 9.8 meters per second squared. We're going to round that, just for simplistic purposes, up to 10 meters per second squared. So mass, 100 kilograms, times acceleration, 10 meters per second squared, is equal to 1,000 kilogram meters per second squared. Now, the good thing is that we have a round number. We have 1,000 of something, but we have this messy kilogram meters per second squared. The good news is kilogram meters per second squared, that is equivalent to a Newton. And you're like, okay, well, what's a Newton? We're going to get to it. So we have kilogram meters per second squared, which is equal to a Newton, and we have 1,000 of those. In the metric system, 1,000 of anything is a kilo of that. So if I have 1,000 newtons, then I have 1 kilonewton. So one average person hanging statically, so not falling on it, but hanging statically, one person is equivalent to 1 kilonewton. So this rope happens to be rated at 40 kilonewtons, brand new, with no knots tied in it. So therefore, without any knots, if 40 of us were able to just hold on to it and hold on, then this would be able to potentially support us, even though the rope would end up being damaged at that point. But it wouldn't fail until at least 40 of us were hanging on this. So I told you that this couldn't have any knots in it for it to maintain that rating. Every time that we tie a knot or a hitch into a rope, it loses some of its strength rating because of the bend of each of these strands of rope. So every time that we put it in, we lose some rating. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. The other things that would also reduce some of the rating would be if this is deformed, if this is degraded. So deformation might look like cuts, it might look like frays. There might be some bulges that happen because of internal twisting. We might have, from a degradation standpoint, sun exposure, so UV exposure, chemical exposure, so acids and bases, or any other burns per se, so rubbing some friction on there. So that's the basics about rope. We're going to kick into terminology. We're going to cover a few terms that you're going to hear when we are using ropes out in the field or in practice. The first one is going to be working end. We have working end and standing end. Working end and this is all relative to the person that's doing it. Working end is the end that I am currently working with to tie or affix to something. The rest of the rope that goes down and hangs out in a pile, that is the standing end. Now, I just had this and this was my working end, and I'm going to start piling it up over here. So that is now my standing end, as this is becoming my working end to create the next tie or whatever I'm going to do with the rope. The next term that we're going to learn is a bight. A bight is simply when we have a rope doubled over like this, where the two strands do not cross. So that's a bight. If I turn it like this, that's a bight. I can have it upside down like this, and I have one bight and two bights. Okay? So it doesn't matter the orientation, it's that the two strands are parallel and they do not cross. Then we have a loop, which is where these two strands cross, and it creates a circle. That is a loop. I previously mentioned a tie being a hitch or a knot. So a tie is the overall category, a hitch and knot are the subcategories, and let me explain the difference real quick. A hitch is some tie that requires some object to hold it so that it doesn't fall apart. As soon as I remove that object, notice the rope just comes apart. So whether it's wrapped around my finger in a particular way, and then if I remove my finger from the system, it falls apart. A knot, on the other hand, and it can be as simple as an overhand knot or more complex, I don't have to have an object for it to stay and maintain its form. That is a knot. When I tie a knot, I will also have a tail. And the tail is this end of the rope that sticks out of the knot. And that tail has different lengths that it needs to be for different purposes for what we're doing. But this is the tail. Then I have dressing a knot. So to dress a knot means that it's clean, which means it's easy to visually look at and identify what it is and that it's tied appropriately. So every time we tie a knot, we want it to be clean so that I can say, yep, that is a figure 8 on a bight or a retrace figure 8, and it is tied appropriately. The next term, which we typically don't use with North Valley Search and Rescue, but nonetheless, it's called a bend. A bend is when we connect two ropes together, and there's one rope, and then I would tie some sort of knot, and it creates a bend when there's two ropes that come together and tied together with a knot. We've got two more. One is a stopper knot. And a stopper knot is some type of knot that I'm going to tie at the end of the rope every time so that when I'm using this, I have devices that will hold onto the rope that we're going to use when we're lowering and raising people. But if there's some sort of failure with that device, that knot will stop the rope from sliding all the way through. I don't want it to be like this where the rope just goes and my buddy who is on that litter down there is no longer attached to anything except for that rope that's traveling down the hill with him. So every time that we load up, we just need to tie a stopper knot, and a great stopper knot to use is a figure 8, which you'll learn in another video. And finally, we have progress capture. We use progress capture when we're using a mechanical advantage system to raise people to pull a load up a hill per se. So what happens is I can only pull so much by myself with one strand of rope. So we set up a mechanical advantage system to increase my leverage on that system. And there's a part that moves, it's called a tractor. There's a part that moves in that system. And when it comes all the way up to the top, I have to stop and reset. But I don't want to lose all of that progress that I've made of pulling my friends up the hill with the patient. So therefore, we have something that's going to hold onto the rope as a progress capture so that I don't lose that, so that I can reset and then start to pull again. When I'm tying knots or hitches in a rope, there are a couple of things that are going to make that tie, whether it's a knot or a hitch, lose strength rating, because we just learned that every particular knot has a reduction in strength for the rope. Our goal is to not have any more than we have to of a reduction, because we want to utilize the full strength of the rope. So here are the two things that make a difference. One is every time that this makes a bite, so in this case, this is a figure 8, it's got a bite up here, it's got a bite down here, okay? Those bites create an unequal tension inside the core of the rope. So the fibers, the core fibers that are going around the outside of this bend are stretched more, therefore holding more of the force of the rope than the ones on the inside, which are relaxed and scrunched together. So we have an unequal pull, and that reduces the strength rating of the rope. The same thing applies when I take a carabiner per se, and I put it in, wrap it around the rope, or the rope around it, and pull on both ends. The tighter this bend, the more of a reduction of strength that I have. So if I have a smaller radius carabiner, and I put that on and I pull down, I'm going to lose more strength rating than a larger carabiner. Same thing applies for pulleys or anything else that I'm going to go around. The next thing that reduces the strength for our ropes is any sort of pinch point. So here, the rope pulls through this loop here, and that's going to pinch or bind on itself, which will reduce also the strength rating of the rope. There are 6 rules to rope management. The first rule is do not step on or over a rope. If you step on a rope, at any point that rope could potentially become tensioned, which puts you in a position that your leg can become entrapped and get pulled into the system. It's a bad place for you to be, and now you're also a victim and no longer a rescuer. Do not put yourself in that position. It also can embed more dirt and sand into the rope, which is not what we want, because then we have to wash it a lot more frequently. We also have potential for more damage to the rope. So don't step on. Don't step over a rope. Right now this rope is somewhat loose, and if I step over it and the rope becomes tensioned, it's not going to feel good for me. So never step over a rope that could become tensioned. Always step underneath the rope. You can go around the rope, but do not step over a rope. And to alleviate some of the challenges of stepping on ropes or preventing some other folks in your team or others from stepping on the rope, rule number 2 is to keep the ropes tidy. In this instance, I have no idea where the end of the rope is. There's a lot of things that can get caught up in the rope, and I don't even know where to start. That's going to take me a lot of time to undo. If I look at this scenario, I can see that my rope is nicely stacked on a tarp with the end clearly visible, and all of the items that I may need to use are well within reach but out of the way of the rope. The third rule in rope management is to always tie stopper knots in the ends of your ropes, because you don't want to be lowering somebody and then they go away. The fourth rule of rope management is to remove tensioned or taut knots before you store a rope. These tend to seize and not come undone very easily after they've sat. So once you've put this in the bag, break that apart. And if you need to, you can find a new spot, retie a new knot for simplicity of storage. The fifth rule of rope management is to stand clear of recoil areas. So unless you are operating this particular station, you should not be standing behind this. You should not be standing directly off to the sides of this, just in case a component in the system fails and the rope or metal pieces come flying at or towards you. So stay away. The sixth rule is to always wear leather or synthetic leather gloves when the rope is in motion or could go into motion. This rope moving at just a reasonable speed can burn right through your skin and down to bone very quickly without you knowing it. So protect yourselves and wear gloves. When working with ropes, there are three things that we want to avoid. The first one are acids, the second one are bases, and the third one is coiling a rope like a mountaineer. Let's dive into each of those. Acids. Acids do not mix well with ropes. We will find those in two common places while we're out and about. One of that is batteries. You might find it in the engine compartment of the truck or vehicle, as well as sometimes we'll have some sort of batteries as far as flashlights or any other batteries sitting around that can corrode and can damage the rope. The second type of acid is urine. Please don't urinate on the ropes. All right, on to bases. So bases, the primary place that we're going to find bases that don't mix well with ropes are going to be bleach. Sometimes we carry it with us. Sometimes we may get a little bit of blood on the rope, and you may think to decontaminate the rope, you want to use bleach. Please don't use bleach. Please contact one of us, and we will direct you appropriately on how to sanitize the rope. All right, the third thing was coil a rope like a mountaineer. We do not want to coil a rope like a mountaineer, and let me show you what that means. I'm going to hold the rope in one hand, and I'm going to put it around my elbow. You've quite possibly seen this with maybe some hoses, garden hoses, or electrical cords. And what that does, every time this goes around, it adds a half a twist into the rope. So when I let this all loose, it turns into a pigtail and it has a whole bunch of twists in it. So we're not going to coil it like a mountaineer. So since we're talking about coiling ropes, let's go ahead and look at how to coil ropes. So I'm going to show you two different methods on a butterfly coil. And a butterfly coil effectively means that it's going to have two wings going over one body. So here's what that looks like. I'm going to take an end of the rope, or it could be in the middle of the rope. This rope isn't marked, so I'm going to start on the end. And I'm going to, for the sake of what we're doing now, I'm going to give myself a long tail. Once I've got that long tail, I'm going to take the rope and lay it over my palm, and the rope will be dangling down. The tail of the rope is on this side, and the rest of the rope is on this side. So this is my working end of the rope, which is the bulk of the rope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out with one arm, and I'm going to let that dangle as a bite, and then lay it over my hand. Okay? Now you'll notice that I can slide my hand in right underneath and all the way down, and I don't catch a rope. So now I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to notice that the bite is now on the other side of my hand, lay it on top. I can still take my arm, slide it down through. There are two loops now on either side of my hand. So I'm going to continue to do this to create bites, and I'm just going to lay them over my hand, and at any point in time I can slide my other hand underneath and all the way down, and it should not catch on a rope. So effectively I am creating two wings like a butterfly. Okay? So I can keep going like this all the way until I get to the end of the rope. However, our ropes, one, are heavy. I'm not very strong. And two, our ropes are bulky because they are 11 millimeter or half-inch ropes. So at some point, I'm no longer going to be able to hold this in my hand. I cannot fit it in my hand, or I can't hold it up. So therefore, I'm going to transition, or I could also start this way, in what we call the neck coil. Okay, it's still a butterfly coil, but I'm going to do it on my neck. So here I am. I'm going to grab right down here where I want that bite to be. I'm going to extend this, and I'm going to flip it. Then I'm going to reach over with my empty hand, grab it, and flip it. And so I want these loops down here to be about the same length, and when you practice this over and over and over again, they will become a lot more symmetrical, but shifting between your hand and here doesn't make them very symmetrical. So I'm going to keep going like this. So I grab with my free hand underneath, I extend out, and then I flip the rope over my neck. Take my free hand, grab the rope, and flip it over my neck. Grab with my free hand, and I keep going until the entire rope is coiled up on my neck. So now that I have a nice neck coil, and I've got two long tails that are approximately equal, what I can do is take all of this off of my neck, and you'll notice that I can take my hand, slide it underneath, and all the way down, and nothing's going to catch it. Now, I might want to transport this. That would be the predominant reason why I'm going to coil it in the first place. So to transport, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two ends, and I'm going to make it so that these loops are approximately equal on the bottom. And I'm going to start wrapping from just above the midpoint and work my way up. And I'm going to make a few coils, and then I'm going to, with the hand that's pushed through there, I'm going to grab a hold and I'm going to pull that through. Now, what that allows me to do is I can take this and I can carry it wherever I need it to go. If I also need to, I can take this, flip this around, and I can wear this like a backpack, tie this off, and then I can transport it hands-free so that I can focus on whatever else it is that I need to focus on. Ugh. All right, so I just coiled that rope and walked it over to where I need to be to set up my anchor. And now what I want to do is get this ready to utilize in a way so that it can dispense easily and it's tangle-free. So I'm going to take this coiled rope and I'm going to do what we call flake or stack the rope onto the ground, which just means, going back to our 6 rules of rope management, the second one is keep our rope tidy. We're going to lay it out in an organized fashion so it feeds well. First thing to do is clear everything out of the way. If there's any sticks or debris or branches, etc., move them out of the way. If you have a tarp, this is an optimal time to lay out a tarp, and then the rope can just go right on top of whatever's on the ground and you don't have to worry about it. In this case, I've got a nice clean floor, so I can go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out these 2 lines, the tails, and I'm going to slide my hand into this loop so that when I undo this coil, I still have a hold of it. Now, because I coiled this, I know that if I lay this out like so, I can grab the tail that's going to pull off of the top, and this will feed naturally out. However, if I wasn't the one who did it, I don't know that this end did not pass through one of these bites and it's going to create a knot. So therefore, we're going to restack it. And here's what we're going to do. First step, I'm going to take this and get it out of my way. Second step, I'm going to tie a stopper knot in the end of my rope, going back to my rope rules, and I'm going to lay that out over here. Now I'm simply going to flake the rope back and forth in some sort of organized pattern. However, it doesn't have to be very pretty. It doesn't have to be in figure 8s. It just has to go back and forth so that it's consolidated, it's tidy, and so that the ends do not cross into the pile. Now you'll notice the end is over that way. I can easily identify it because it does have a knot in it. And I can just go, 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 all the way to the end of my rope. So this way I know that when I get to the very end, that this end will feed from the top and nothing's going to interrupt that. At some point, I may get a hitch in the rope, but that's easily undone by taking the strand that's looped around on the inside, pulling it out, and due to the nature of a hitch, it takes that item to maintain its integrity, and once I take that item out, being in this case a chunk of rope, it comes all undone. This is how you flake or stack a rope. We're going to look at stuffing a rope back into a bag. So I have utilized my rope for what I needed to utilize it, and now I need to take it for transport and storage and put it back into the bag. There's a couple of considerations that I need to put into place. One is that when I'm putting it back in, since we're in rope rescue world, we want to inspect it when it goes back in so that when we pull it out of the truck and we need to use it, we don't have to inspect it as it goes. So I need to be conscientious of that. When I'm putting it in, I also don't need it for it to go in an organized fashion. It just needs to be shoved in the bag. And as long as I have both ends tied so that they can't intermingle with all of the loops and wiggles inside of the bag, then you cannot have a knot inside of the bag. You can have a hitch, but that can be undone by just finding where the loop passed through it. But it's not a knot. So there's a few different methods that I'm going to show you. The first one is, as I'm doing the stuffing, I'm again inspecting it. I'm doing that tactilely, so I'm feeling it as it goes through my hand as well as watching it. So I can hold on to the bag with a couple of fingers and I can run it through with one hand, just pulling and shoving into the bag. And I can do that. And once it fills up and starts coming out of the bag, I can take and I can stomp the bag down and it'll compress the rope back down. That's one avenue that seems to work really well, but if you have smaller hands or if that doesn't feel right to you, then another way to go about this is if I'm wearing a harness, whether it's a full body harness I can connect up here in my chest or down here if I'm wearing a waist harness, and I can run it through my harness. So now it just redirects the rope, and I can feel with this hand, and I'm visually inspecting as it goes through, and I'm able to shove that in and stomp it down. If I'm not wearing a harness, or another method to go, is I can take this and put it over my shoulder, and I can do the same thing as it comes along. Now, this is utilizable. However, it does get your shirts and jackets pretty dirty, especially if this is a little wet. I don't like to do this, or if I'm wearing Gore-Tex, because it'll rub through the Gore-Tex over time, and it'll just create weaknesses that makes it less waterproof. So this is an option. Notice I'm not putting it on the shoulder, that the rope is stacked on that side, because as I do that, it's just going to fall off my shoulder. So I put it on the other side so it'll pull against my neck. Okay. A fourth way is if I have some sort of high attachment, so I think of a limb on a tree, or in this case a truck, I can hook a carabiner to it, and again I can go ahead and just keep stuffing as it runs through that high directional. I really like high directionals because then I don't have to manage that rope coming through, and if there's twist in the rope, then they often come undone as they pass through that carabiner. So going back to our rules of rope management, when I get to the end here, I have a knot that was loaded or potentially loaded. And the rule number 4 was that I undo that knot for storage. So I'm going to take that, I keep the end out for the time being, and with these particular bags, there are handles that come up from the inside of the hood of this bag. And for sake of not letting it get tied up, but also quick identification of where the end is, I just tie an overhand knot right around one of those loops, toss that all inside, and cinch it up. We hope this video was helpful in understanding this component of our rope rescue system. Thank you all for watching the video. Remember to subscribe below to have quick and easy access to all of our videos. We look forward to seeing you in class and out in the field.